What if burnout is not failure, but a signal that an old story about who you are or needed to be is no longer true? This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I am your host, Dr. Carolyn Sengel. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we are here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success, one that is aligned, meaningful, and truly yours. My guest today is Meggi Rombach. Meggi has spent over 2 decades leading teams and driving change across private and humanitarian sectors, from Procter and Gamble to UNICEF and the ICRC. Constant high performance took a toll, and burnout and health challenges forced her to pause. That moment changed everything. Today, she coaches leaders and teams to navigate transitions with presence, depth, courage, and helping them find clarity and purpose in times of change. When people talk about burnout, they often focus on workload. Meggi invites us to look at identity instead. Who do you believe you need to be in order to be valued? Who do you become when you feel unseen? What happens inside you when feedback lands as judgment? In this conversation, she shares the teenage moment that shaped an authority pattern and how returning years later created the kind of closure that reorganized her nervous system and steadied her leadership. This is the beginning of what she calls the mindful rebellion, a grounded shift that replaces proving with presence and restores your ability to choose your next chapter with clarity. Meggi Rombach, welcome to Your Next Success. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
My pleasure to be here. Can't wait.
Awesome. We're going to get to all the amazing work and coaching and helping that you do with executives, leaders, people now. And let's go back to the very, very beginning. Tell us, where were you born? What was life like for your very littlest self?
Wow, that's a long way back. So I'm a small town girl. I'm German originally. And yes, I'm from a small town in Germany. I'm the sandwich kid. So I'm the middle kid of 3. I have an older brother and a younger sister. My dad used to work as a chemist. So my mom helped him out in his pharmacy. And yeah, so that was really little Meggi. I started horse riding when I was really young, so that was part of me from a very early age. So I don't know how much more you want me to go, but
So horse riding was an interest, and being in the middle of siblings, I imagine enjoying time with them. What kind of things did you love doing, like activities for once you got into school and even outside of school? What were you drawn to?
so we were this kind of typical German middle-class family. So we all learned the instrument when we were really small. So I started playing the clarinet and I quite liked it, but I stopped it quite early. And it's something I'm a bit resenting now that I hadn't kept going. I also did jazz dance. So I did jiu-jitsu, so I did a few things, but then very early it was very clear that for me, horse riding is my calling. So at one point I was literally going to the stables every single day, so that was just my thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with my siblings, this is small town Germany. So we had a house with a garden. So we would just really live quite freely and independently. So we would, play in the garden together with the neighbor kids. In primary school, I had a little gang that I was kind of co-leading. So we were like a few boys and girls. And we called ourselves the Hopping Rabbits, which sounds a bit better in German, but not really. But basically, we're just going to like outside to like a little lake into the woods and like check out animals. I don't know, like just this kind of really
Just
nature-based
exploring
little
and
adventure.
enjoying.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds lovely. How about school-wise, when you started doing those things, were there any particular subjects or things that you enjoyed more than others?
So I always loved mathematics, so
Oh,
numbers just always came to me. I really didn't like languages. I started with Latin, which, that didn't help. And I really hated Latin for many years. And funnily enough, the last few years, I started liking it because I had such an amazing teacher who loved it so much, and he made it so interesting and like little challenges. He would make us translate Latin poetry into German, but with the same melody. And there's a very peculiar rhythm to Latin poems.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's fun, because that was like a riddle and I wanted to crack it.
Mm.
And then the other bit I really liked was biology. So I actually, in Germany, the last 2 years of probably like somewhere between high school in the US system, you can pick two main subjects. And for me, that was mathematics and biology. And I just loved it, both of them.
Mm. And so as you went on to decide what to do after high school, or is it secondary school there? It's so confusing. But how did you decide what to focus on or where to go?
So I keep on asking my mom, what did I want to be when I was a kid? And she doesn't really remember. So one of the options I looked at was architecture, because my uncle and my grandfather were both architects, but that kind of decided not to go after that. I also considered biology, like human biology, neuroscience, like something, not medicine necessarily.
Yeah.
I was also quite interested in physiotherapy, but that you couldn't study in Germany. And I was coming from this background where kind of, it was almost assumed if you can, you study. So I kind of disregarded the options that weren't university or studies. Ultimately, I chose on international business. And one of the reasons I did that was, first of all, it was not university. It's in a German system. It's kind of a very practical, let's say, really a practical university, so it wasn't extremely academic and theoretic. It was really practical. It was hands-on. They told us you won't spend a semester to learn this formula works. You just know it works and you use it. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And also it was 2 years in Germany and 2 years in Spain. So for me, it was really, so I wasn't interested in studying languages to study languages, but I wanted to be able to use languages to communicate. And then I thought business, that's pretty broad. So that will be useful. It wasn't necessarily a passion calling, but it just sounded like a good enough thing to do. And Spain sounded like adventure. So here we go.
That's pretty cool. And had you ever, and so you had to like go to Spain? Had you ever lived outside of the country or traveled a lot extensively?
Yeah. So yes. So actually, before I even went to Spain, so the studies were two semesters theoretic. Then I had to move to do an internship. And then I went on top on an Erasmus semester to Gothenburg, to Sweden. And only after that, I moved to Madrid, to Spain. And already before, I had studied Spanish or learned Spanish for a few months in the south of Spain. So that's also why I was really interested in going there. Then I lived 2 years in Spain. And then, you meet people that give you ideas that you never thought about. So my flatmates, they were 1 year above me. After they graduated, they went on a around the world trip. And at that time, there were tickets where they were pretty cheap, and you could just go one direction and you had like X stops on the way. So I was like, I want to do that. So I did that after graduating for 3 months. And then I met all those people that did it for a whole year. So I was like, eventually I want to go for a year. So I actually went back, started working for 2 years. But then, for various reasons, I chose to quit that job. And then I went traveling for a year.
What was the subject of the job that you were in temporarily? Like, what kind of a
2
job
years,
was
so
it?
it was not that temporarily. It was marketing, and it was in perfumes, which was pretty funny because most girls were like, "Oh my God, you have the dream job," and I'm not even that type of girl. I liked more the aesthetics of it. Let's design a beautiful bottle.
Right.
It was more that. It wasn't like I don't know, oh, this is a perfume.
Interesting. Okay. So, but you had that idea of traveling for more than just a couple months. And so you had that job, left that job, and then went for a year. And then how was that? traveling all around. Just fun.
That was amazing. So that was another round the world ticket. But this time here's the first time I went to the US and to Australia, and I felt that was brave enough for a small town girl from Germany. But then you met all these people that went to India and to South America. And I was like, whoa. So the second time I started off in South America. And then I had a working holiday permit in New Zealand. So I spent a few months there working. And then I
What
went
did you
back
do
to Australia.
while
I
you
worked
were?
as a horse track guide.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd go there and I work in marketing, but then nobody wanted to hire me. Like you just come in for a few weeks and, that didn't really work. And ironically, I met two British travelers in Bolivia and they pointed me to that stable in New Zealand. And I just rocked up and asked if they need somebody. And then I stayed for 2 months. It's just amazing.
That's awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you're traveling and are you by yourself traveling?
Yes. Yeah, that was another thing. It
How
was
was
really
that?
scary at the beginning. Yeah. So the first time I already traveled large chunks by myself. And it's so funny. My mom and Ivy have a different memory of that moment because she was like, you're my brave child. You went on a world trip. And I was like, the evening before I took that flight to San Francisco, that wasn't even South America. I was crying because I was so scared.
Oh,
But then in the end, it worked out and it was fine. And you learn. So I felt like I learned on a safer ground because US and Australia didn't feel so crazy.
mm.
And then the second time was challenging because I landed in Peru in my first week. I had a big backpack and a small backpack, and my small backpack got stolen.
Oh,
I wasn't aggressed. It was in a bus. I was just stupid. I didn't watch out for it. But that was quite a shock, in like week 2. And then, I had to digest that. But then you meet people on the way every few weeks, and I don't know, it was actually great because I could reinvent myself every 2 to 3 weeks when I changed country, and then you go like, okay, now I meet new people. So let's see where that takes me.
oh, that's cool. That's interesting about the reinvent yourself. Yeah, because you're in a completely different environment situation. People don't know you, and so you could just try however you want
Yeah,
it to be.
exactly.
What kind of personalities or ways of living did you try to be? Do you remember any of those?
Mm. So the first time was a bit more organized. So I actually went first onto a farm. Do you remember the movie The Horse Whisperer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the guy who was the inspiration for that, Monty Roberts. So I volunteer on his farm close in Bilton, just outside of San Francisco. So at least I had a point where to go to.
Yeah.
And then in New Zealand, I met with some friends from home, so it was a bit more organized. What I really loved about both of those trips is just really being in nature. I feel like, especially the second trip, I organized in a way that I had summer the whole year. I went with the sun.
Yeah.
And I was just outdoors the whole year. And I just totally loved that. So I did a lot of hiking. I went whitewater rafting. I guided horse tracks. That was just really me being reconnected with nature. And that was amazing.
And so then what happened?
Then halfway through, so I quit my job in Germany in marketing because that company was bought by a big American company. And it was pretty clear that people have to move to Geneva. So I was like, okay, let's quit and live my dream. So I'm always joking that I took a long detour to come to Geneva because instead of going like straight 3 hours, I went once around the globe. So basically halfway into my travel, I was hired back, which was amazing. So I knew I can literally blow all my money because once I'm back, I'll have a job.
Yeah.
So I knew where I was going to, which was nice because the first 6 months, it was total freedom. I wanted to become a movie director. I had like all these crazy ideas. And then actually through guiding people on the horse tracks and telling them about my job, I realized that I actually quite liked my marketing job. And then after 6 months, when I re-signed the contract, it was amazing because I knew, okay, once I'm home, I don't have to stress. I just pack up my stuff. I moved to Geneva, and that's where I've been ever since.
How did you pick Geneva?
That was the European headquarters of that. It was Procter and Gamble. So that was just their European headquarters. So that's just, if you want to join, that's where you go.
I got you. Okay. And then what happened? So now you've come back around, you're in Geneva, you rejoin, and then what?
Hmm. So then I got, so I joined P&G, which was great, but it was also very competitive, very high performing. So I called it my very well paid MBA because you learn, but I also felt this whole competitiveness was not really me. But at that point, I realized if I want to move into the development or humanitarian sector, I need at least 5 years work experience unless I want to start from scratch. And at that time, I had 2 years. So actually, the other day, I found some papers where literally I had papers already saying 1 or 2 years into P&G, I already had a plan when to leave P&G.
Aha, that's okay.
And then it took me like 2 or 3 years longer than what I initially anticipated because I got a bit caught in the hamster wheel. It was like live hard, party hard, learn a lot. It was exciting days, but it was also very stressful. And then I actually had a burnout, and that was the moment where I was like, no, I need to press pause.
What?
So
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more. Like, what did the burnout feel like, look like, all of that?
So I realized, I mean, it's now I know what I think I know what was some of the driving factors for that burnout. So at that time, life was stressful. I had a balance, but it was a very high balance. So I would do a lot of sports and I would party hard and I'd work hard. And that was almost unsustainably high, but it was fine. I was in balance. But what really killed me was my relationship with my direct boss, we did a Myers-Briggs personality test and we were literally the opposite on all 4 variables. We were just very different people. And also, but I just felt, I just didn't feel seen by him. I felt like he couldn't see my contributions. I felt misunderstood. And then I got really worked up myself. And that just got me at the point where at one point it was just, I lost self-confidence. I just thought like I'm a people person. I'm really good with people. But other than that, I'm not even sure if I can do the job. I just had lots of doubts. So I went on a break, and I was actually one of those I don't know, signs from the universe, because I posted something on Facebook at the time, something like, I'm so fed up with this. And then an old friend from studies who lived in Vancouver replied to me kind of, what's up? And I was like, I just need to get out of here. And I deeply felt I need to reconnect with the person I was before all of that. So I was like, can I come hang out? And he's like, sure. So I jumped on a plane and I went. It was not long. It was maybe for 2 weeks. But it was just amazing to reconnect with an old friend that I've known before I've become a professional.
Yeah.
And just get to another place in the world, just completely disconnected and kind of to find me again.
Yeah. Yeah. And just enjoy, I guess, without the pressures or any of the stress of having to do something. You now got to choose and completely. That's amazing. And then what happened?
I was off a bit longer, so I also went on a short holiday with a friend. So I had like a break, and actually at that time, they had offered a sabbatical program, whereas one can go for an unpaid break to UNICEF in the field.
Wow.
So I went. I mean, they weren't so sure. I mean, there were some questions if I could go from a short medical leave right into a sabbatical, but I could. So then I went 3 months to Cameroon with UNICEF.
Wow.
And that was just amazing. And when I came back, I was like, okay, that's it. I need a change. So I then applied for a quite specialized MBA program in Geneva, which was focused on international organizations management. So it was really targeted for people that either want to move from the private sector into development or humanitarian work, or for people from the sector that wanted to beef up their management skills. So it was a really small program, but it was an amazing group of people. And I did that for a year. Then I volunteered with UNICEF for almost a year in Geneva, which was part of the MBA. So I needed some practical experience to graduate. Then I was looking for a job for 2 years. And at one point I was, not 2 years, I mean, the whole transition took 2 years from the moment that I quit until I had a paid job. But I was probably looking for like almost a year. And then I found my work at the Red Cross.
Tell about that.
Yeah. That was amazing, so I really felt that that was a dream come true. Because, the way I compared it at the time was, I felt like a penguin on land, so I would waddle, but I couldn't really, I wasn't free. I couldn't really move, or it wasn't effortless. And then coming into the Red Cross, I felt like I'm back in water. So it felt easier. I felt my people skills were appreciated. And at the same time, so that's a specific part of the Red Cross. That's the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is the part that works in conflict. And it's quite centrally managed. And I just felt like I kept the professionalism. So I kept the ambitious, driven people that I worked with in Procter and Gamble. But I had on top this whole sense of purpose.
Mm.
And I was just really a dream come true.
What was it about working in there? Like, what were some of the projects or people that you got to work with while you're in that capacity? Because, we hear here, okay, American Red Cross, right? So it's like they show up at disasters and like there's a hurricane, there's a flood, and then they're there to help. Help me understand from my ignorance, what does the International Red Cross do?
So the International Red Cross, so they have two main functions. They're really at the origins of the whole movement. So on one side, they protect the body of law, international humanitarian law that governs the whole Red Cross movement. So that you have a lot of lawyers in the organization. And then on the other side, it's very operational. So, and it only goes into conflict countries. And it's full of there are many experts, we have many engineers, we have medical staff. It's a really broad range of people. So when I joined in the fundraising team, and I actually never wanted to be in the fundraising team. But that was, for me, coming from marketing, that was the way in.
Yeah.
And I worked on corporate partnerships. So from the beginning, I wanted to work on corporate partnerships that go beyond just we give you money. I really wanted to see how we can bring experts from a corporate together with our experts and build something where the skills align, where people work on real operational collaboration. We did a few really cool pilot projects, and I've been leading that work for 10 years. And up until today, I haven't seen that anywhere in the sector really at scale. This is so hard to do, to find this technical overlap. So if any listeners have example that work at scale, send them to me. I'm still interested to see them. But it was really innovative work. So we're really trying to change the way the organization operates. We really try to trailblaze almost for the whole sector to find new ways of doing things. And there are other organizations that tried that, and some of them more successful than us. So it was really interesting work, because for me, it meant I work really closely with our operational staff. So I would sit down with the doctors, with the engineers, to really hear and learn what they are doing, to then be able to see if we can match this with some skills in the private sector.
Interesting.
So it was
interesting.
good fun.
Yeah. And then what?
Yeah, so that I did I navigated my way around within the Red Cross through a few restructurings, losing the job and then finding my dream job inside. So I moved around. So I'd say it probably took me almost a decade to get to the place where I wanted to be from the beginning, which was really leading globally on partnerships, which was, it was actually a small team. But what we worked on was we worked closely with our colleagues internally to establish a way to work in partnerships for them. So to really multiply the effort. So we would train people internally, and then they can go out and have more impact. And that was all great. But then there was one financial crisis, there was another financial crisis. And then, into 2023, I hit another low point. So I had another burnout, or I was very close to it. And there was just too many changes. Also, with all these changes, there was always a lot of insecurity attached to my position. So for 2-3 years, every year I didn't know, do I have a job next year? And that was just so, that really ate me up. But then again, I realized I had an issue with my manager, and my manager was great. So I realized that was also the expectations I had towards, I was really dependent on external validation. And so as it happened a second time, I became really curious to figure out where that was coming from. And then just so happened, I also had quite a serious health challenge. So I was on leave for quite a long time. And when I came back, I negotiated to come back into a new role. So I didn't want to come back to my old role. I wanted to come back to something that leads me forward, which was then in career development. So I came back to work on career paths for one of our teams. And that was just great. And then the next financial crisis hit. And then I lost my job last July, which was a shock. But at the same time, it was this famous kick in the butt I needed to finally embrace a new chapter.
Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
And what is that new chapter now?
So it's in the making. So I've become really curious about transitions last year as I was pushed into my own transitions. So now so first of all, I'm building and piloting my own portfolio career, to kind of have several income streams. Because also, I'm also looking for a job, but it's just really hard these days.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is whether it's a bridge or it's a new model, I don't know yet. But I'm really testing with being more entrepreneurial about how I go about work, to do maybe part-time roles, to maybe do some advisory, to do some team trainings, to push my coaching practice a bit more, to focus on my podcast. So I'm really experimenting right now. But what I do now, it's all about really, I want to work with people, help them through transition, whether it's in career development or in leadership. It's really, this chapter of my life is about giving back and connecting with people.
And what are some of the favorite things that you love as tools to help in your coaching, or what were some special tools that even, I guess, helped you that you decided to now utilize in your coaching?
So it's a permanent beta, so it's still evolving. Last year, I was all about, there's a really good book. It's called Transitions by William Bridges. And it talks about how in transitions, you really have to mark the ending. And then often we're tempted to rush into the new beginning. And what is really important to spend enough time in the neutral zone, like in this messy zone where you don't know what's next. So that's where I was really focusing on last year. And then I got really curious about transitions. And then I discovered what I now call the mindful rebellion. And that's really now my thing that I want to focus on. And when I say mindful rebellion, it's like I'm a people pleaser that discovered my own rebel energy. And when I mean rebel energy, it's kind of to be braver, to mark my boundaries, to find and claim my voice, to set my rules and protect my rules. And the more I talk to other people, often in midlife, but not only, I see there are more of us that need that, like high performers, high achievers that reached what I call Everest Base Camp. They reached a certain level, but then they're like, is that it? And if that's not it, what is it? And it doesn't necessarily mean you walk out of your career, but it means if you stay where you are, you want to have a bit more balance, or you just want to put your boundaries clearer. And I feel I had to learn that the hard way. And I now would like to support people. And how concretely I do that, it's really on focusing on mindset, what I call mindset mastery. So on your mindset, including tools inspired by, neuro-linguistic programming, sophrology, or mindfulness, but not just, but really on your mindset. And the other one is really on planning, on the how, and I look at it as agile project management, to really have proof of concepts, little tests, try it out, see if it works, see how it feels, so that's kind of how I help people through it. Because I feel sometimes we feel like if you want to make a huge change, it feels so overwhelming. So we don't even start. So if you can make the first step smaller and less radical, it's more likely that you just do it, and then you learn, and then you adjust.
I love that. Yeah, almost like the kind of like the Atomic Habits approach, right? James Clear with Atomic Habits, and it's like somebody that wants to go work out, and you make this thing that you want to lose like 30 pounds, and you're going to work out, and then like you're saying, it becomes so overwhelming. But what if day one you just put your shoes on,
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Exactly.
and just get to that, and then after making that your habit of you put your shoes on, well, then now your shoes are already on. You might as well go for a walk. That kind
And
of
that's
thing.
how I built my mindfulness and meditation practice, because I did the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, like the 8 weeks where you're asked to meditate at least 20 minutes every day. And I was like, after the 8 weeks, I'm like, 20 minutes every day, that's a lot. And I was like, yeah, but small things. You're on the tram, in the bus.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at your phone, okay, let's just breathe for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Really these small things. And I managed to make that a habit. And it's really cool because now I just do it automatically. And sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 2 minutes, but at least I made it a reflex to think about that first before I pull out my phone.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I've started to try do like more slow, controlled breathing at times. And I'm not even aware of it, but then my kids will be like, "Why are you breathing like that?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry. I'm working on
Join me,
just
join
try."
me.
Okay. So now as you kind of, well, I guess two questions. I didn't ask you this at first. When you were in your, younger years, what did you think it meant for someone to be successful? Like from that lens then, what did you think success was, and what did you think that meant, and how was your mindset around it then?
I'm not sure I was thinking about it in that way. But what was really inspiring for me is I'm coming from a family with very inspiring female role models. So my dad's grandmother, the great mother, she was the first female chemist in Germany.
Oh, wow.
And their stories, how tough that was at that time. They were literally writing letters to each other, like the handful of women that were even studying pharmacy at the time to support each other. So that was, I grew up with that story. My mom's mother was a librarian, which, was maybe nothing as fancy, but still it was like at a time where a woman wouldn't necessarily even work.
Yeah.
And on my dad's side, my grandmother was a doctor. She didn't really ever practice, but I just grew up with all these stories. So sometimes when I hear about women having this complex that there cannot be anybody, they cannot do anything, I never had that because I had these role models in my, like these stories that just told me whatever you want to be, you just try. And even if it's not easy, you just keep going, right?
Did you feel like you had to become something super great then? Somebody of the first nature?
Maybe not the first, but it was more around like before graduating, before going to university, there was a moment where I figured out how I get really good grades in school. And that was also when I started competing horse riding. And that gave me a lot of attention of my parents. So I felt by performing, sandwich kid, I would finally be seen. And years later, I actually discussed that with my parents, and they were really surprised and shocked that that's how I felt back then. And I think that did get me into a high achiever mode. And that was something I worked out years ago when I realized I called it, I had this drive, I have to be the grade A student because I can. And then I realized, but if I don't want to, I don't have to,
Right.
It could be good enough to be grade B and just be a happy grade B and stop pushing once you reach that. And for me, that was really a big shift and a big learning to say, you know what, if it's good enough, it's good enough.
Interesting. And so I guess I'm curious now, after, taking this time and experiencing burnout a couple of times, and now really wanting to not do that again and help other people not have that as well. How do you define success now?
So that's not really answering your question, but I actually think I found the source of my burnouts with the help of a psychologist. And I'm almost convinced I unblocked that problem. You want me to tell you a bit about that, or you want to tell me
Absolutely.
about success?
Well, we can get back to success. Yeah. Tell
So
us
as
about
I
the burnout.
mentioned,
Yeah.
in both cases, I had male bosses, and that was the issue. And very quickly, it was clear to me it had nothing to do with my dad. I mean, my dad is amazing. He's a very kind person. I had my grade A issue with him, but I had sorted that out. But I was like, this burnout thing is nothing to do with my dad. So what is it? And then I found this memory when I was 16, and I was horse riding. And at that time, I was guiding younger kids on trail rides. And one day there was like an issue. There was a tractor, the horses freaked out, and all the kids fell down, and the horses went back alone. And my horse riding instructor, who was like a second dad to me, because remember, I was there every single day. He basically blamed me. He was like, "Oh, you've ridden too fast, you pushed too hard." And that was not true. I didn't. And I felt that was so unfair. So, and this memory, it's so vivid. I can literally still see it. There's something about this memory. So my psychologist actually challenged me to go back and see my horse riding instructor.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, I had always this idea, one day I go back there with my kids. And then I had kids really late. I only have one. So that also, I had always excuses to postpone that. So finally last year I went back, and I was really nervous about it. And we didn't talk about that moment, that didn't even matter. But I met him, I went there with my kid, we had a chat, we talked about the good old days, he remembered me, and I feel that gave me closure. That somehow, because also now looking back as an adult, I mean, he was probably in his mid-30s back then. Imagine you have tons of horses coming back without kids and the parents freaking out.
Yeah.
It's maybe a natural thing to just look somewhere to sort out the situation. But of course, as a teenager, I couldn't see that.
Well, it's hard to know from that vantage point, right? And of course, you're not wanting horses to come back without kids either. But that's very interesting that you were able to connect that and go back and, kind of experience that environment again, and seems like come out with deeper understanding from this later wisdom and perspective. That's very interesting. Okay, so back to success. How do
that
you
was for success.
define success now for you?
So now it's much more about, my new tagline is freedom, flow, and fun. So it's not about rank, about leadership position, about huge salaries. Yes, of course, I'd like to earn enough to be comfortable and not to worry every day. But it's much more about finding something that gives me joy. I'm also not really interested to work full time anymore. I'd be happy to work whatever, 60, 80%. That also gives me time with my kid. He's still quite young. He's 8 years old. So, to really make most out of that time.
Yeah.
So in that sense, for me, success now is more having like a balanced life. It's more about the lifestyle than about like the classical success, shiny objects.
Yeah. I love that, because that's how I now try to focus, right? Help people design, like, what is it that you want your life to look like? Let's figure that out first. And now let's figure how can your career fuel that life instead of take from it? Because otherwise, without that pause, without that understanding, it's so easy to get caught up in what your work wanted you to do and what you needed to do to achieve, to get to the next level, all of the things, even to get a raise, all of those things. And that can come at the expense of the life that you really do want to have, or just thinking like, oh, they'll always be there. And they might not be, or they grow up. So I love that.
And also to normalize what I do with the people I work with and with myself. Joining the Red Cross was my dream at that point. Joining P&G was amazing at that point. But it's okay if your dreams change, because sometimes I feel like, people feel like they betray themselves. If I worked so hard at a time to get there, if now I let it go, do I betray myself or my dreams or whatever? It's like, no, but it's okay that, dreams change, goals change. And And then it's important to reconnect with what actually matters now. And
Yes.
that might be different.
Yes. I've come to realize that questioning your career happens at very predictable stages. So the first one is 15 to 18, then 22 to 26, then every 7 to 10 years after that. And questioning doesn't mean there's something wrong. It's an opportunity for you to be a little more self-aware and choose what you want, because it's not, I mean, it could be like the book of your life, but there's chapters, and something can be great for a chapter, and then it can be time to go into a new chapter. So it's like, doing that of like, who would leave their PhD, or who would leave that job, or who would, ever decide? And I will decide that, because you have to sometimes move forward, like you're saying, let go of what you thought you had to be to open up the possibility of what you can be and how you can fully embrace the life that you have and enjoy. And of course, yes, still serve and help people along the way, but it doesn't have to come at your expense of your happiness or your joy.
Yeah, I really love that. Yes.
Yeah. So what's next for you in your wildest dream? What would you love that to look like, your future?
So, I also have a podcast, and I had a guy on my podcast, and he talked about you should, these days there's a chance we get older than before. So you should have a vision of how you want to be when you're 100 years old. And I was
Ooh.
like, wow. So I did that exercise, but then I also broke it down like by chunks of like 20 years. And then in my wildest dreams, I dream my mindful rebellion to have become a movement. So I would love to see more people that dare to embrace their rebel energy. And also what I mean by rebel energy, there's actually even a really good book about it. It's by an author called Francesca Gino, Rebel Talent. Because even in companies, if people dare to speak up more, actually that leads to more engagement, more innovation, and more retention. It's if we let go of that fear to give people a voice. So, and the mindful bit is very important of the rebellion. And the rebellion is against your own stories, your old script. So that's not a rebellion against the organization. It's a rebellion at your own limiting beliefs.
Yes.
So I would just love to see more people that freed themselves from it. And don't wait to midlife for that. I mean, I think at midlife, more people really start questioning. It's probably one of the 10-year moments. But why wait for that questioning moment in midlife? Start earlier,
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be amazing. I would love to see that come through, that more people dare to really live up to their true selves and find their calling and dare to just go for it. And let go of those expectations that have been handed down by parents and society and what success is supposed to be like, and just to find their own definition of success.
Yes. That's what I want. Like your authentic success. It's not what the world said or what this book said or what that society says. It's what is it for you in this next chapter or for the next things. How do people find you and how do they work with you?
So I mean, there's my podcast, Played by Your Rules. And also I have a website. Or maybe the easiest thing is to find me on LinkedIn, because that's where you'll find the latest, greatest links.
Meggi, I appreciate you so much for sharing your story, for sharing some of your wisdom, your insight, your inspiration. And I certainly wish you all of the best as you, fully develop into your next success and helping people to find theirs as well.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to being here.
Meggi, thank you for modeling what it looks like to meet burnout with curiosity. The Mindful Rebellion offers leaders a grounded path forward built on awareness, boundaries, and courage. Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sengel. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.